In-depth journalism in the Memphis community, the Daily Memphian is of Memphis, not just in Memphis, and seeks to tell the stories of this city. TheDailyMemphian.com. Truth in place.
Welcome back to another edition of the Daily Memphians and Memphis Grizzlies podcast. This is your host, Drew Hill, joined as always by my colleague, Chris Herrington. And we actually have a special guest today, Parker Fleming. He is our draft expert in the Memphis area who spends all the time watching these college prospects. And it's a good week to do so because the Grizzlies are on an 8-game losing streak and the winning will be few and far between, it feels like, to conclude the season. So it's a good time to just talk talk draft prospects and spend some time doing that. Parker, how are you?
Drew, I'm doing great. Obviously, March Madness starts this week, and I woke up finding out that we're gonna get AJ DeBonsa versus Jalen Swain, so that's gonna be pretty fun. It's pretty fun matchup for this week. But no, man, I'm doing great. Always love listening to the pod. Appreciate y'all having me on.
So every week we have been doing a tankathon simulation. I figured we could start with that this week. Are you ready, Chris?
Yeah. Hey, Parker. Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Okay, let's go ahead and do this tankathon simulation. You ready?
Yep.
All right, go. We're not going to be going with mine this week. We have an extra competitor.
I'm gonna say we're just going with Parker's. What do we got, Parker?
All right, from mine, we got Washington 1, Brooklyn 2, Utah 3, and then Atlanta with the New Orleans pick at 4.
Ooh.
So Memphis stays at 8.
Yeah, that's basically a variation of what I got. I've got also Eastern Conference heavy at the top, which is good. If you're not going to get the Grizzlies there, I got Pacers, Wizards, Nets. Then I got Dallas at 4, and the Grizzlies staying put at 8.
Well, we definitely don't want mine because I have Dallas jumping to number 1.
Nope, that's not okay.
With Washington at number 2, Sacramento at number 3, Brooklyn at 4, Pacers, then to the Clippers at 5, Utah at 6, New Orleans to Atlanta at 7, and the Grizzlies staying at 8. So everybody has the Grizzlies staying at 8 this week. We didn't have a big tankathon like we did. Was it last week that we had we both had the number 1 pick? Yeah.
Yeah, we both clicked it with the Grizzlies jumping up to 1. Yep.
The Grizzlies, if we want to just do a little landscape of the league here, the Grizzlies are now tied in the win column with both Dallas and New Orleans. Everybody's at 23 wins. The Grizzlies are only at 44 losses. They have the Nuggets tonight. We're recording this on Wednesday morning. So that's probably likely to be another loss there. It feels like with the loss over the Bulls on Monday night, at this point, I mean, I'll ask you, Chris. Chicago's not going to catch Memphis at this point, right?
I don't think that's likely. It stuck up on me yesterday how few games are left because I was looking at somewhere else in the standings. I was like, oh, this team's only like back 4 games and maybe they'll catch them. I was like, wait a minute, there's like 13 games left. So there's not going to be that much movement at this point. So I think anything that's more than a 2 or 3 game gap is probably unlikely to get closed in the standings at this point. And so, yeah, I don't think Chicago, at 4.5 game gap from the Grizzlies and Milwaukee, by the way, the same now, 4.5 game gap. I don't see that closing. Grizzlies are not going to go on a win streak to end the season. So I think the Grizzlies are going to land somewhere pre-lottery in the 6 to 8 range. With 7, I think is the most likely spot because New Orleans will pass them. That's my read.
Yeah, New Orleans still has some games against some tanking opponents left on the schedule, which is definitely going to be useful. I'm trying to pull it up now. So Dallas has games against Portland, Milwaukee, and Chicago remaining. Like, can they win those? Maybe. And New Orleans has the Clippers twice, Portland, Sacramento, and Utah. So New Orleans, you think, is going to win some games. I don't know. What's the most likely place to finish for you, Parker, as you've sort of look at where the Grizzlies are in the reverse standings right now?
Yeah, I'm gonna go with 7 as well, just because I mean, out of that group of, I'd probably say really Dallas, New Orleans, Memphis. New Orleans has the least incentive to lose because they owe that pick to Atlanta. Um, one thing I'm just gonna maybe kind of monitor because I know after the All-Star break, Cooper Flag had an ankle injury. It's like at what point does Dallas just shut Cooper Flag down, which would pretty much all but really lock in the sixth spot, which, you know, may I think the Dallas will probably remain six. I mean, they played a lot of their guys last week in Memphis, Flag, Washington, Gafford, Najee Marshall, and it was still a game for the majority of the game, even though the Grizzlies didn't have Ty Jerome, Cedric Howard. I think Cam Spencer sat out that night as well. But yeah, I think Memphis will hang at 7, and then we're all just kind of praying to the lottery gods that they can jump up. I think it's going to be, I think the last 10 games of the season for pretty much anybody in that top 10, it's going to get pretty disgusting.
Yeah, so right now in spot 8, the Grizzlies would have a 6% chance at the number one overall pick and just over a 25% chance, 26.3% chance to finish in the top four. You can increase those odds pretty significantly if you can move up, a couple of spots to number 6. The top chance to go into the top four increases up, almost by 10%, 34.8%. So, it would be beneficial if they could get there. I just don't know if they will. I think 7, I agree with both of you guys, is the more likely scenario here for Memphis. Okay, let's talk about some draft guys. And we'll sort of do a round table here and we can go around the horn. But Parker, you have been writing about these guys uh, for quite a bit. I mean, you're already deep into it, and I know you built out last year a very thorough draft guide, which I read, and it was excellent. So before we do that, can you just tell people where they can find your work?
Yeah, I post all my work at substackelitis.substack.com. Obviously, if it's too much of a mouthful, just go to my Twitter at Pac_Flocka. Yeah, I've been writing about once a week or so on the draft. That probably won't change as a lot of my energy does go um, towards the draft guy when it comes to building out draft stuff. Obviously, I'll have some like Grizzly specific ones, like in the 2024 draft. I had some thorough breakdowns and Grizzly fits with guys like Alex Sarr, Donovan Clingan, Reed Shepard. And then once they drafted Zach Edey, did one on Zach Edey. So yeah, that's where you can find all my NBA draft stuff.
Awesome. Go check his stuff out. It's really good. And we'll let you kick things off here. If you have a player that you want to talk about, you can talk Swain, who played last night. You can go across the board. You get the number one pick, Parker. Who do we want to discuss?
Yeah, I'm actually going to go with the team here that I'm keeping an eye on, and
Okay.
that's Arizona. Um, and I know Chris wrote about these guys this week. I've gotten really intrigued with Braden Burries and Mo Krivas as well. And then
Right.
also too, I do want to see more of Koa Pete in this high leverage situation. He's one of the guys that I'm probably lower on compared to consensus, just because I'm like, all right, what's the spot in the NBA for a 6'7" power forward that doesn't shoot? The rebounding numbers aren't great. Doesn't have that like trademark skill defensively, even though I'm higher on his defense because of his strength and his lateral and somewhat lateral quickness. But no, those other two guys, Burries and Krivas, I'm very interested in seeing how they perform at the NCAA level for a 1 seed um, Arizona team. Really, with Burries, I look at him and he's the guy that I think could kind of crash the party among the guards. I'm actually releasing my big board tomorrow with my top 45 prospects going into March Madness. And I actually have Burries at 9 ahead of Michael Brown Jr. So he kind of does crash that party a little bit. And, I surveyed the league. I look at these top teams. You're looking at OKC, San Antonio, Boston, Detroit. They all have the bigger two guard that can kind of act as a primary every now and then, but they're probably the best at their secondary. They can defend, they can shoot, they can pass. They're just overall smart players with physical profiles that can defend up or they can defend down. I look at that with Burries, and I think maybe, in a world where he's not a secondary guy to Jaden Bradley, maybe there's more to his creation that that is led to believe. One thing that immediately pops off the page for me is his gather steps, like in transition or off drives. He has just impeccable footwork on his gather step to get to the bucket, and that stuff's just kind of really intriguing when, especially kind of laying out how the Grizzlies want to play. They want to play fast. They like to run a lot of side actions. They love that next action. I think Burries is a guy that can create out of that, and I think he is best equipped to be a plus defender sooner than a lot of the guys at that guard spot. And then Mo Krivas, I've seen a lot of buzz on him on draft Twitter, wanted to see more what that's about. Absolute giant, a real rim deterrent. And you're looking at, okay, if we're trying to get a backup for Zach Edey to where we can at least have a platoon of two guys that are 7 foot plus that can protect the rim at a high level, Mo Krivas is probably your best bet. And one thing that's intriguing to me, shoots 79% from the free throw line. The touch is smooth. I watched it again recently against Iowa State where he did stretch the four out, and the shot looks good. I think he will shoot at the NBA level. But one thing I am kind of keeping in the back of my head before I get too excited is this is a guy that his sophomore year he missed all but 9 games due to a stress reaction in his foot. So it's
Yeah.
like, do the Grizzlies want to deal with that again? But also too, like this center class is wide open with Jaden Quaintance's knee issues at Kentucky. So it's like if Arizona does go on a run, Krivas has a chance to become the best center prospect in this class.
Well, Chris, you're interested in Arizona.
Yeah, I've watched probably as much Arizona as any team. It's probably one of the teams I've watched the most. And Drew has already joked earlier on the pod that it's become a Braden Burries pod because I bring up Braden Burries every week. So I am with you, Parker. I have Burries within the top 10. He was one of my first draft thoughts. Was early in the process when I first started watching games. I thought, and I asked a couple people who are more tied in than me. I was like, why is this dude in the 20s in these mocks? I didn't quite get it. And he seems like he's floated up. To me, the Burries question, you talked about this a little bit, Parker. The question of how on ball he's going to be at the next level, I think is an important question for the draft generally, and maybe for the Grizzlies specifically if they're picking, in that 7, 8, 9 range, 10 range. Because I look at him and I see three different sort of NBA comps, good comps, right? Like anyone could not work out. We always do the like worst case scenario is like really good players. In reality, like any player could just not be good. But assuming that he's good in the NBA, I see sort of three different comps. And if he becomes a full-fledged point guard, to me, there's some Chauncey Billups there. He's the same build as Billups. His per-minute production as a college freshman is very similar to Billups. The mix of strength and weaknesses in terms of shooting, defense, mature play, but on the other side, not an explosive athlete, not a creative, dynamic playmaker. To me, it looks a lot like Billups, but I don't know whether he will be a point guard in that way. If he's a combo, that's a sort of a 3-and-D combo, he could be like Derek White,
Yeah.
or if he's strictly just a two-guard, off-ball two-guard, maybe he's like a Gary Harris, Courtney Lee, right? Those are good players, but those aren't players you want to take in the top 10 of a good draft necessarily. So where do you see the ultimate outcomes with him, and how important do you think it is where he lands in terms of how much he's going to be an on-ball player in the league?
Yeah, you guys hit it pretty good on Burries. Parker, this is maybe a question for you. We've talked about BPM, and Chris has noted on this podcast, true freshmen with a BPM over 10 have a historically very good hit rate in the NBA. And Braden Burries is one of several freshmen this year. Cam Boozer, Allen Graves, Caleb Wilson, Kingston Flemings, Keaton Wagler, AJ Devansa, and Braden Burries all over 10 as true freshmen in BPM. But Burries is a little different if you throw out Graves. Burries is different than the rest of those guys in part because Jaden Bradley's there, right? And he's kind of dominating the ball. And so the usage rate on Burries is just over 21%. where all of those other guys are 25% or more, 27%. Like
Mhm.
they're on the ball constantly and their level of opportunity is sky high. And so when you're evaluating them, you know that, that they are the drivers of their team where Burry's necessarily isn't necessarily that. So how do you weigh that, right? How do you weigh that when you evaluate a player like that?
Yeah, for sure. And I guess that's just kind of more of the of kind of weighing the totality of things because obviously, you have guys that project as primary guys, whether that's Acuff or whether that's um Kingston Flemings, Michael Brown. But like it's still the totality picture where it's like, some a lot of those guys do have their struggles defensively. They have their struggles with their frame. So it's like, okay, if he can't be a primary, what does he do well? Does he thrive as a secondary? Like for him, it's the shooting, it's attacking against tilted defenses, it's more of connective playmaking rather than just being a primary guy. Like, yeah, his assist percentage this year is 16.4, but he also doesn't turn the ball over. He has a 9.8 turnover rate. Um, I mean, but also too, like I look at him and say, okay, he may not be a primary, but can he close the gap between him and the other guys with his defense? Because I do think I think that Derek White outcome is the outcome I'm looking for. That is because also too, like you're not putting pressure on yourself to where it's like, well, we have to get a point guard in this class because we're trading John Morant. Now it's all kind of clunky. It's like you're maybe forcing yourself into a Ty Jerome or a Scottie Pippen Jr. trade to make stuff work. But I do think that is weighed to a degree, but it's just all about what do you want out of the draft? Like, are you wanting to find that primary handler, or are you still fine going with the guys that you consider best player available? Which I always try to stress to people when they think best player available, they think of what's on the ESPN ticker, where it's like, oh, that guy was the best player available. That was the best player available. They drafted for fit. No, the best like all these teams have there's 30 different boards throughout the league at least. So and if we're going off of that historical BPM, Burry's is high. I do think one thing to note that is if you actually filter it out by conference only, Birdies was third among freshmen in BPM at
Mm-hmm.
11.9. So, yeah, again, it's just all about the totality of things because even guys that project as primaries are going to have flaws that could hinder your team building. Because I know that's been the loudest thing about Acuff is like, yeah, he's awesome as a primary, but his defense will make it tougher to build out a team. And maybe they look at Birdies it's like, okay, he is the most um I'm trying to, I don't want to say like fail proof, but like he is,
Solid.
I don't even want to say safe for two. He's solid.
I
There,
think
there's very,
to me
there's
Burries
very
is
limited outcomes. Yeah.
I was gonna say to me Burries is the guy I am most confident will at least be good, but I have the
Yeah.
least confidence of the super high end outcomes, and that's sort of I think that's sort of what you're alluding to. I'm interested in a guy you haven't brought up. We've been talking about some of these guards. I'm interested in touching on Koa Pete, who you brought up, but since we're on this topic, we're talking about Burries as sort of a combo, a guy who could be a little bit more on ball, off ball kind of guy. You mentioned Acuff and Flemings, I think pretty clearly more on ball traditional lead guard types. Where do you classify Wagler?
Wagler's very fascinating to me.
Yeah,
I didn't get a chance to tweet this out, but I texted it to some friends. Somebody did the whole like, oh, what's your hottest take of the 2026 NBA draft? Mine is that we just forgot how good Keaton Wagler was when Kylan Boswell was out. Like he was
right.
awesome. Like that game against Purdue is still one of the best scouting games I've ever seen. Like that was like he walked in as a three-star freshman on ball against Purdue on the road, top five team, and just I mean he had like 45 points, 9 assists, something like that, something crazy. But no, I do think that he's probably going to be at his best as again another combo, just because he does need strength. Because I want to say I saw something where he shoots like 30% off drives. He definitely needs to add strength, and I do think, and maybe like this kind of helps him in an infrastructure like Memphis, where you do have guys like Ty Jerome. You do have guys like um, Scottie Pippen Jr. They're going to be developing Walter Clayton Jr. Obviously, everything could change, but you're not pressured with as much primary responsibilities. And I do think the fact that he can shoot, the fact that he's 6'6", I think that kind of allows for a little bit more off-ball malleability. Whereas obviously with Acuff and Flemings, like they're electric, they're awesome, but they're smaller. Like you can't really project them off the ball except for really Acuff because he can shoot. But yeah, Wagler's interesting. I need to see more of how he's affected by the physicality. Because I had like a major like Illinois kick where I had already watched like 4 or 5 games before February, and I'm like, okay, let me slow down on Illinois to like the tournament. But no, I really like Wagler. I have him like 7 right now, just because the stuff that he did as a primary, as a 19-year-old, I always say to people, his superpower is his composure. Like one of the most composed freshmen I've ever seen. But I do think he has some real stuff to kind of shore up on the physicality end to really make me confident in his ability to be a primary at the NBA level.
We forget, to me, I was talking about Burry's just more of a narrow band player in terms of outcomes a little bit. I think of Wagler as an extremely wide band player in terms of outcomes. And I think sometimes we forget that the NBA draft is not about drafting players who were the best college players. You're not drafting guys to play
Mhm.
the last college
Yep.
season. You're drafting them for the next 8 years of their NBA career. And Wagler has downside outcomes because of the strength issues and some of that stuff. I mean, there's a lot of development that needs to come with him. But if he adds that strength, his combo of size, processing, composure, deep shooting, I think there's a super high ceiling with him. But it would make
Yep.
me a little nervous. But like, I might have him at fifth actually on my board.
Okay.
On that note, I'll bring up a couple more players that I think fit with exactly what you're saying, Chris. I'm going to clump two together here. Nate Ament and Michael Brown Jr. Because I think these are two college players, Ament in particular, who has real physical tools and is probably going to, you'd expect with this frame, fill out a little bit more when he gets to the NBA level. Doesn't exactly have a shooting profile that's encouraging his freshman season. I mean, he's put up good points per game, but the efficiency leaves a lot to be desired. He's taking a lot of shots in the mid range. He's not, um, getting to the basket at a rate that I think you would expect for a player that's 6'10" and has the level of mobility that he has. And so I was at the SEC tournament last weekend, and I had the chance to talk to both him and Rick Barnes. And like one thing that was, brought up was that he has struggled a little bit with college physicality. And Rick Barnes almost, he went as far as saying he thinks the SEC in college basketball can be more physical than the NBA just because of the spacing and whatnot. But um, and Brown sort of also has some holes, I think, in the offensive resume with some of the turnovers and that sort of thing, and obviously dealing with a back injury, and he's been hurt. So two players that maybe haven't had the freshman season that you would have thought back in December, but have real potential, right? You're not drafting based on a single college season. You're drafting based on the the next 8 years, as Chris said. And so Ament to me is particularly interesting just because the physical tools are so good. Um, but I don't know. I don't know how it's going to translate, at least like the first year or two in the NBA. So Parker, what do you have any thoughts on Ament or Brown?
Um, I'm just gonna start with Brown first, just because it's kind of quicker. With Brown, the back scares me. But I actually do have a video breakdown of his 45-point game, and uh, definitely like when you're talking about like scoring talents, Michael Brown's one of the best in his class. I do kind of worry that he's a little bit too Jordan Poole, instead of like Tyrese Halliburton or something. I think the passing is nice, and also one thing I've kind of noticed with this ESLO system is that no matter who's at point guard, they're going to generate assists. So maybe that's not as a big of a concern because I have said before, like, oh, a Jordan Poole that passes the ball is awesome. Um, but yeah, concerned about the back again. We got to see the measurements. We got to see if he can really function off ball. We got to see if he can defend at a near NBA level. I'm so I do this every year, and I hope I don't make any sort of Tennessee fan base mad here, but I do this exercise. I started it last year, doing it again this year, where I kind of pick some boards that I find very reputable and I compare mine against the consensus. And right now, I'm the lowest on Nate Amick compared to the consensus. I have him as a late first round guy. Um, the thing that there's just a couple of things that just alarm me. For one, in half court scenarios, he shoots 42% at the rim. Two of his 13 dunks this season actually came against Auburn. Drew, I remember you texted me about that,
Yeah.
where like you said that like Auburn just kept letting Nate Amick dunk, and I'm like, well, that's not even his game. So like that's kind of crazy. Um,
It was hard to watch because it was like
yeah,
Auburn can be so bad on defense that it's just like hard to even evaluate there. But
yeah,
I guess
and
part of this question too, not to interrupt, but like
mm,
if you're the Grizzlies and you're picking in the top 10 and like you mentioned Wagler having the wide band, right? Like but Wagler's a very efficient college basketball player right now.
yeah.
Is it when there's so many efficient players right now that are freshmen? Would you be willing to take it? Is it harder to take a chance in the top 10 on a player that's not efficient, like those two in particular?
Yeah, I mean, I would Amit more than Brown. I would I mean even Brown with now the back stuff. I would be a little bit terrified if that was their first pick. Now, if they do kind of like what they did in the 21 draft, where maybe they use that traded player exception to take on some bad money but move that Magic Suns pick up closer to the top 10 and they take one of those guys and you do take one of those productive freshmen with that first pick, then cool. Like that's I'll be fine. Um And Amit is somebody like I'm going to spend a lot of time on because there is like what y'all have both said, like there's the projection element of it. You can't rank guys based off what they're going to be in their first year. Um, I try to look into the lens at I would say I like to look in the lens of like their career, like you're drafting them for the next 8 to 10 years, but also really it's also like just the rookie contract plus like the first 2 or 3 years of their next contract. Because I mean that's where you find out the most. But yeah, Emmett's profile is really scary. I don't see how he creates advantages. I think, like you said, he's too mid-range heavy, and I think it's because he can't get to the rim. He does draw a lot of fouls. That's great. How's that going to work at the NBA level? Um, but at the end of the day, he's 19. He has a lot to fill out on his frame. You could look up and he could be like a very high level 3-and-D guy, or you can look up and by the end of his rookie contract, he's Usman Dang. Like I just I don't know what he's going to be, and that kind of scares me a little bit.
To me, and I know we need to take a break, but just real quick on him. To me, his physical profile, it's funny you see the Kevin Durant stuff thrown around. That needs to be retired for everybody. His physical profile is more Trey Murphy. And to me,
Mhm.
that's the upside. But he hasn't demonstrated that level of shooting touch.
Okay, let's do a couple more, but first let's take a break for a message from our sponsor.
Want to make a big impact without getting lost in a big system? Join Youth Villages to be a force for families while becoming part of one. Help make positive changes on a national scale, one community at a time. It takes a family to transform lives. Start with yours. Apply now at youthvillages.org/careers.
Chris, do you want to go? Do you want to throw another name out there?
Well, Parker brought up Koa Pete. He's interesting to me, and I'll just tie that into a question about the Grizzlies' second pick. If we haven't talked about the top guys, but if they don't jump up to the top four and they're picking in that 6, 7, 8, 9 range, it seems fairly likely they end up with a guard because that's where the talent is in the draft. if we say for the sake of argument, they end up with a guard with that first pick, are there guys you're looking at? Are you looking more front court with that second pick? And are there guys you like in that, in the teens range that you would be focused on?
Yeah, in the teens range, um, obviously I look at the landscape of what's going on in the NBA draft world, and I can't help but think that if draft Twitter likes Dalen Swain, I think the Grizzlies like Dalen Swain too. Um, just kind of that wing initiator. I do need to see if he can he be more 3 and D? I know the comp thrown out a lot is like Najee Marshall, which like Najee Marshall, really good player, can
Right.
impact winning, but he's not full-fledged like 3 and D. But I do think in the way that the Grizzlies initiate like their flow offense with a lot of like side pick and rolls, really kind of puts a lot of playmaking responsibilities in the hands of their wings. I think Swain would be awesome.
That
Um,
was a bad Swain game last night in the first four. I mean, he was standing around offensively at the end of that game, and he had the turnover late. It was a bad Swain game. I don't. I like him too, but it was
yeah.
not a good one.
Yeah, I'm actually gonna need to watch that because actually one of my good friends that also does draft stuff, Rich Statement, he's told me he actually has his thing he calls he officially coined it like the Desmond Bain theory, where there was a game one time where Des had like at TCU had like his worst shooting night. But because of everything else he did, he was still the best player on the floor. So he always tries to look at how does a guy play when they have like when the shot's not falling or they're just not getting up shots at all? Are they still impacting the game? And so he calls that his Desmond Bain theory. So definitely got to see that with Swain because the thing I need to see, and I think the thing that kind of gets lost in like the whole draft Twitter space, it's like, okay, yeah, it's great that he's a 6'8" wing that's a real isolation driving presence, but the ball's not going to be in his hands that much at the NBA level. What can he do off the ball? Um, but I'm trying to think of um
What power forwards do you like? If you throw some good names out there like Morez Johnson, Heinz Steinbach, Koa Pete, who you mentioned, maybe
yeah.
Lindeberg drops because of the age. Maybe there's guys I'm forgetting. I mean, the Grizzlies traded Jaren Jackson Jr., right?
Yeah.
They got room in the front court. Are there any fours in that range that you would who would you like more than others?
Yeah. I currently have Steinbach as a top 10 guy.
Okay,
So for me, it's Steinbach because I've said it for a couple months, but I just love the idea of having Edie, Steinbach, and Coward and just never surrendering a rebound ever again. I think you can kind of emulate a little bit of what made the Rockets so tantalizing, but with a little bit more offensive upside. Um, I do worry that Steinbach is a little bit too much of a 4.5 rather than a 4 or a 5
right.
because of the defense, the rim protection, but one of the best sub 7 foot rebounding prospects. There's production going back to FIBA with him. The touch is good. Like he could probably shoot at the NBA level. Um, I mean, as far as power forwards, I mean, I really like Josh Jefferson a lot.
Okay, yeah,
Um,
that's a guy I
Same.
forgot.
I'm a Jefferson guy as well.
because also one thing too that I think kind of has hurt this team's roster construction, hurt the Grizzlies' ceiling a little bit, especially once that Steven Adams went down, is they lost a front court playmaker, and a lot of these good teams have guys that could make reads out of the front court, whether it's at the 4 or the 5. Um, I had actually slipped. I had Jefferson in the teens on my last report. I'm going to have him more like mid 20s on this one because I thought Arizona really highlighted the fact that he's more of a below rim finisher, and Pete and Krivas both just like stifled him in that game last week. Love Morez Johnson for the defensive switchability. Morez is just a guy kind of the thing with Morez, I'm not fully counting on him just yet in this draft, just because like is he convinced to stay for NIL to be a bona fide lottery guy next year?
Right.
Um, which will be a conversation with some guys.
You make a good point about the front court playmaking. That is not going to be the Zach Edey strength. I think we've seen some good passing from Cedric Coward, but he's more of a wing anyway. I think the idea of adding and Jaren Jackson was not particularly good passer. I think Santi has those skills, but adding more of a connector, more of a passer playmaker in the front court would probably do a lot of good for the team? Does that mean you would take Cam Boozer number one?
100%.
Okay.
Yes, I am full on locked on Cam Boozer number one. The production, just very high level problem solver, and the fact that he could dominate the game in multiple facets. I mean, obviously, everybody has sung the praises of Cam Boozer here, there, and everywhere. So I won't take up much time on that. But yes, I would take Cam Boozer number one. I would even consider I would consider trading like if the Grizzlies fall like between 6 and 8 and he's there at 3, I would probably trade like 3 or 4 picks or even more to move up to get him. Like I think he's that good. Um, but real quick, another power forward I would take. I have him mid to late 20s on the board right now, but I can see him fitting into that like connector role. The reason why I have him a little bit lower than the teens is just because I don't know what his defensive position is. I don't know if he can really shoot, but Thomas Hawk from Florida, like I could just see that fitting. I guess, but again, I just need to see like, okay, he's good at a lot of different things. And the question I've been looking to answer is how is a guy with a quote unquote elite motor not have a signature defensive skill? And that's kind of the worry I have with him. But
As a
still,
great
I can see him fitting.
as a Grizzlies fan, you're not scared off by the common Jeff Green comp that he gets.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw that. I'm like, huh, that's interesting. No, I mean, because at the end of the
I
day,
don't
if you
see
got
that.
Jeff,
I don't see that when I watch it. Like
no,
I think it's 6'9" forward who dunks. I mean, I
yeah,
think that's where that comes from.
he plays much more like Jeff Green played a little bit more like a wing, right? Like he plays like a big in that Florida offense. But can we
mhm,
spend a little time on Acuff because I feel like he's the talk right now.
yes,
He's got a lot of the buzz after he led Arkansas to the SEC title. Led the SEC was the SEC Player of the Year. Led the conference in points and assists, first freshman to do so since Pete Maravich. Um, there's an open debate going on, which I think a lot of Memphians do not acknowledge as a debate, which is if he is the best guard to ever play under Calipari. And people, Tigers fans, would tell you it's Derrick Rose. Um, what do we make of Acuff? Because the offensive numbers are so good. They're like absurd. He's like, if you go by adjusted, points per possession, like he's 99th percentile off the dribble. He's like 97th percentile and up as a drive and kick passer and as a pick and roll passer. And like he does everything on offense so good. And we talked about BPM earlier. He's still not a 10 plus BPM guy because the defense is just not there with him. So how do you evaluate Acuff and where is he on your board, Parker?
I currently have him 6. Unironically, I am a very big Kingston Flemings guy, so I still have him 5. But I could be easily persuaded because Acuff's just been undeniable. Everybody brings up the defense, and also too, people do use the trade deadline stuff with Trey and John Morant as a demerit against Acuff. These smaller offensive first guards, Trey was more or less salary dumped. Job, there was no trade. The market was not there. And so it's like, okay, why use a top 10 pick on this guy? But I think it's more resource allocation rather than I think there's a difference between using a top 10 pick on a guy and spending $50 million a year on a guy. But Acuff, he's just so undeniable. He kind of has that it factor. He always is there for those big moments. And there's just so much stuff he could do offensively. He's a high level passer. There's actually this query I put together because of him where there was only 3 guards since 2008 with a 60% true shooting percentage, 30 assist percentage, and an assist to turnover ratio greater than 3. And it was Darius Acuff, Lonzo Ball, Fred VanVleet. Like very, very high level offensive initiator. And then also too, like, yeah, he did dominate the ball at Arkansas, but I think he can really be a factor off the ball. He's shooting 49% on catch and shoot
Yeah.
threes on 100 attempts. And while shooting 39.5% on dribble jumper threes. And I do think that the next iteration of Grizzlies basketball with a different point guard, you need a point guard that can come off a ball screen and shoot. I just think that really stretches the defense out. He can get to the rim. He can draw fouls. I and he can make all these just very complicated passes. He can manipulate a defense. Like he's what a franchise point guard looks like. But you do have to be more thoughtful and careful building a team around his defensive
I know I
deficiencies.
was
But
scared because as I was going through the Hoop Explorer, like similar statistical
yep.
profiles, Rob Dillingham, like, is one of
Oh,
and that's a
He
little scary.
he's a lot bigger than Dillingham.
Well, yes.
I had zero interest in Dillingham in that draft. As we talked about it. He was not on my board at all. I had some skepticism on Acuff. I've started to come around on Acuff. I do think the defense is an issue, and it's not just because of his size, because he doesn't really. When I finally watched some games. I finally paid for ESPN. I've watched some full games. He seems like he treats the defense as a nuisance, just a thing you got to deal with until you get the ball again, which reminded me a little bit of John Moran at Murray State. So I think he needs better buy-in on defense in the NBA level. That could definitely come. But two things I would say sort of in his favor in defense of him relative to this sort of small guard comp. One, he's got a sturdier build, which I think could help his durability. He's got just a stronger build than Trae Young or than Ja. He also doesn't play with the same kind of recklessness that led to the Ja injuries. The other thing is he's a better shooter. And Trae Young has a reputation as like a shooter because he shoots a lot. He's never actually been that good of a shooter. He's a career 35% three-point shooter in his NBA career, and he wasn't that great in college either. I think Acuff's stronger build and better pure shooting, I think will help him sort of get past that small guard problem a little bit if he buys in more on defense.
Also, in his defense, he plays like 37 minutes a game.
Well, you're
yeah.
right.
And the usage rate is absurd. So they need him on offense.
That's that's in my notes actually when I was watching the games. How much of the defense stuff is rooted in that? It's not only does he play 30 averages more than 35 minutes a game. He has the ball all the time, and they seem to play a really high pace, high tempo. So there is so much on his shoulders offensively. How much does that sap him defensively? How much does that get corrected in the NBA level? That is another point with him, I think.
Yeah, and he apparently the word was at the SEC tournament that like the hamstring or whatever he was dealing with, the injury he was dealing with coming into the tournament where Arkansas rested him the last game of the regular season was like a real injury, and he was like playing through it, and like that's you want that, right? Like we've had problems with guys not being on the court, so like a player who's willing to play through some stuff, I think is a plus. So yeah, he's really exciting. He has all the draft buzz right now. I think we probably need to wrap it up here. I did want to mention one thing. We are going to have a roundtable discussion with our sports staff. It'll include Chris, myself, Jeff Calkins, Parth, Frank, and so our Tigers coverage, our Grizzlies coverage, and that will be March the 31st from 5:30 to 7:30 at Wiseacre HQ on South BB King Boulevard. Just wanted to get that plug in there. Parker, also really appreciate you joining us. We're gonna have to have you on, I think, a couple more times because we can't possibly go through all these draft prospects in one setting. And I do eventually we need to have the top three debate. I think we might all be Boozer guys, but we should at least flush it out a little bit more.
That's been my instinct, but I'm not locked in on that.
Okay, real quick. There's more to life than basketball, as we always do. Parker, what did you do this week? Did you do anything
What did I do
fun?
this week? Yeah, I went to Allie and I went to a wedding in Little Rock on Saturday. So that was a lot of fun. Got to see some college friends that I haven't seen since college, so that was cool. But yeah, just I mean, really the same old thing. I'm in the process of we're in the unpacking process with the house, so been dealing
That's
with
the
all that
worst.
kind of stuff. So yes, it is. Yeah. So yeah, that just grinding away really. So
It is now wedding season. I'm going to be in a wedding this weekend in Dallas, and so Frank will be doing the home game. Chris will have the road game, and Who gets married the first week of the NCAA tournament? Ridiculous. So I have let my friend know that that's unacceptable. But yeah, I'll be in Dallas at another wedding. Chris, how about you?
I figured out how to operate the snowblower that our mother-in-law gave us for the first time. It seemed like more trouble than it's worth because I have two hands and I can shovel, but we literally got like a foot and a half of snow in mid-March on March 15th. Beware the Ides of March because it means a blizzard may come. And so I was blowing some snow while my wife has been traipsing around Oslo and London. So that's how things are going in my world.
Gosh, snowblower in March. I can't say I've ever operated a snowblower before as somebody that's only lived in the southern region of the United States.
It's basically like a lawnmower, except it picks up and pushes out the snow instead of the grass.
And so, well, obviously when you get a foot and a half, but like when you get 4 or 5 inches, are you going to be using this thing?
I haven't to this point, but now that I've used it, now that I've broken the seal and actually used it, maybe I will.
All right, that'll do it for us this week. We will be back next week talking Grizzlies. Thank you again to Parker for joining us. Definitely go check out his work, and you can follow him on Twitter at Paca_Flocka. And we will be back next week. For Drew and for Chris and for Parker, we're out of here.